Hello. If you're new to this channel, then you know that usually I talk about LGBTQ issues, mental health, things of that nature. Um, but as you saw from the title, today I'm going to talk about something a little bit in the same vein, but a little bit more specific. Primarily around the discussion that seems to plague the internet all the time, which is why representation is important. Now, there are many arguments people make for and against it. People saying it's good because it shows that LGBTQ plus people are normal and deserve to be represented just as straight or cisgendered people deserve to be represented in all facets of media. They're not different, they're not unique, they're not anything, they're just people who just happen to be outside of what society deems as normal. And then you have people against it saying it's pandering or it's unnecessary, we don't need it, why is it always there? Or whenever it is there, it's like, oh, why does it have to be there? It doesn't change the story or anything like that. And for the most part, I can see both sides of the argument, but for all intents and purposes today, I'm going to completely ignore the people that go against it in favor of people who understand its role and why it's so important. Primarily due to the show She-Ra on Netflix. Now, as many of you know, if you're watching this video, you are most likely a She-Ra fan, and you know that season 5 just aired, which is the final season, and a very big event happened at the end. I will not spoil it in case there are fans out there who have not watched it yet or wish to remain unspoiled until they have time to watch it. But for those of you who have seen it or have had it spoiled for you because Twitter exploded when season 5 released, if you know what I'm talking about, then you know. If you don't, then don't worry, I won't go into specifics. But the thing I want to talk about in particular is the show's creator, Noelle Stevenson, and her fight to make She-Ra the way that she ended up making it. And the reason I'm talking about this is on Twitter, there have been multiple screenshots going around of interviews that Noelle did right after season 5 was released, basically saying what she wanted to do in terms of the story going into season 5. And for those of you who don't know, the way Noelle made the show was at the very beginning, she pitched the idea to DreamWorks, who signed off on it and gave her 52 episodes right off the bat, meaning that from the very beginning, there were already going to be 4 or 5 seasons, depending on how they formatted the show. We ended up getting 5. But from the very beginning, she always had 52 episodes to work with. That was her set plan. That's what she was given, and that's what she was going to work with. And from the stories that she shared, she stated that from even before season 1 was officially released, they were already working on seasons 4 and 5. And when they were working on season 5, the event that happened was a topic of conversation that Noelle wanted to bring up, and she wanted it to be in the show. But she didn't say anything to the executives over at DreamWorks yet, because she wanted to wait until season 1 came out to see how people reacted to the show. Season 1 was released, and people really, really, really liked it. And that is what gave Noelle the motivation to go to the execs and say, okay, this is what I want to happen at the end of the story, and before I put in the show, I need you to bless it, I need you to sign off on it, so that way I know that it's okay for me to do this. And she got the blessing for it, and everything was a-okay. Now here's where things get important, because she told that story, and a lot of people shared their opinions about it, saying that they were glad that it ended up being in the show, but still felt disappointed that Noelle felt that she had to fight for it at all. Because unfortunately, that's how it is in the TV industry. A lot of times you want to do things that push boundaries or challenge the viewer, but execs are very, very careful of that sort of thing because they don't want to push it too far and then audiences don't like it, which happens a lot. So, the whole point of this video is to say that if you understand representation, then you understand why the internet is so full of bliss right now after the ending of Shira, because that sort of event needs to be normalized. The fact that Noelle fought for it and got approval for it is great because people saw the ending that Noelle wanted to make and everybody loved it. Everybody's super happy, everybody's super content with what they got, and they are happy to make fan fiction and make fan art of what comes afterwards, of like a sort of happily ever after. And a lot of people will look at that and say it's pandering or it wasn't necessary because she was already an established character in the 80s and she didn't need to be changed. I'd argue differently because this show was mainly marketed towards children because DreamWorks rated it as a Y7, which is what you would label a children's television show. But the fact that the LGBTQ plus community latched onto the show, not only for the main relationship that everybody knows, but for all the other aspects, for friendship, for acceptance, for representation, not just for one aspect of the community. This was season 2, so if you haven't watched season 2 by now, then you either don't really care about spoilers or you haven't had interest in the show at all. But Bo's dads is a very good example of season 2. Like, they didn't make a big deal out of it. They didn't make it as like, oh my god, you have 2 dads? Like, whoa. It's like, it was just normal. They dropped it in season 2 at the end, and it was a very good episode about accepting yourself and not hiding who you are from people who care about you because you're afraid that they won't love you anymore, that they'll judge you unfairly or anything like that, because that's what the whole show is about. It's about accepting yourself for who you are and not caring about what other people might think or what somebody might say against you because you want to be who you want to be. Another good example of this is the character of Scorpia. Her journey from season 2 all the way to season 4, and her leaving a toxic relationship and going out and being on her own and making friends that actually cared about her and actually wanted to see her be happy. And that was something that she needed to do for herself. That was a decision that she had to make, and she made it, and it ended up paying off. So the whole point of this video is to say, Shira fandom, rejoice, live your happy moment for as long as it's around. I know there are going to be people who think of it differently, who feel like maybe the show shouldn't have existed or maybe it shouldn't have pushed the envelope as far as it did. But for the most part, I want to explain to the people who feel that representation is pandering or it's not necessary. I beg of you, please stop using that argument because it's not true. Representation does so much for the community that you will never understand if you're not in the community yourself. The amount of happiness and joy that I have seen on Twitter because of one 10-second scene in a 5-season show is amazing. Because we had this beautiful story starting from the very first episode all the way to the very last episode that was well done, it was treated correctly, it was treated realistically, and it wasn't built up for failure. It was built up for success. So for those of you saying that pandering is whatever you call it, stop saying it. Let people be happy. Let people enjoy what they want to enjoy. And if you feel it's unnecessary, then you don't have to watch it. But don't take away from other people's joy just because you see it as a nuisance, whatever that means to you. But anyway, thank you so much for listening to me ramble about the gay happiness that is Shira on Netflix. I'm going to be doing more videos like this in the future, talking about pop culture and LGBTQ plus issues. Maybe a mix of both. We will see. It depends. But yeah, I thank you for taking the time to listen to that, and I hope you enjoy. See ya.